Welcome everyone to Man to Man on the Couch. I'm joined by two Harry Potter fans, Suraj Zaveri, Jason Brown. Do y'all care to introduce yourselves?
Hey guys, I'm Suraj. I am on M2M in other shows, and I'm glad to be here to talk about Harry Potter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Brown, new to YouTube. I'm part of Ravenclaw House of Knowledge, so I'm happy to be here and talk Harry Potter.
Yeah, so what we're talking about by Harry Potter is this past week, HBO Max announced the possibility of a new Harry Potter series on their streaming service, HBO Max. However, not a whole lot has been announced as it's really still early in the process. And I guess asking two Harry Potter fans that know a lot about the universe, I know there's obviously the books, the movies, and now there's the Fantastic Beasts movies. So in the whole Harry Potter just kind of timeline, do you guys have any idea maybe like where this would pick off, if they would redo parts from the movies, or if it'd be a completely new story? If y'all have any ideas on that.
Yeah, they definitely have a couple options there. They could rekindle the seven books, retread sort of Harry's story if they would want to, and that would feel like sort of a cash grab in a way. But they could also take it back farther than the Grindelwald stories and have sort of a prequel saga or a sequel trilogy. So they definitely have a lot of options to work with. I personally would love to see a sequel trilogy in which, or not necessarily a sequel trilogy, but a sequel saga in which we continue Harry's storyline and possibly see um, sort of his trials and tribulations as an auror, sort of like a wizard cop show, if you will. If you've seen the show Gotham, he would be sort of like the Jim Gordon. He would be a young Jim Gordon, sort of taking on wizard crime and possibly introducing us to some cool antagonists. And I've given this a lot of thought over the years, and I sort of would love to see um, Malfoy and Harry have to work together as sort of like this buddy cop kind of deal, or just something fun and something that reintroduces us to this wizarding world.
Yeah, and adding on to that, that was one of my ideas as well, like a sequel, and somehow maybe some involvement from Harry's kids. They showed that at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2. They showed his kids going off to Hogwarts. Maybe his kids are like also part of the storyline. Maybe you get multiple characters, multiple different things happening at the same time. And so that way you can still have the idea of Hogwarts and everything that it was for Harry also be transitioning. But I really like the idea of like a police crime type of show. I think that makes for a really interesting series that you can continue, sort of like Gotham, like you mentioned.
Mm.
And I'm wondering, does J.K. Rowling, does she have a lot of expanded universe beyond the books that were turned into movies, or is it kind of a clean slate for in terms of just storylines to go on now?
I've seen many of her documentaries, and she definitely discussed having developed a huge universe, a vast universe for the wizarding world. So I definitely believe that there are places to go that we haven't seen. There are stories to explore that we haven't seen. But um, then there's the sort of like pushback when she's changed things over the years, and that's sort of been divisive between the fans. So I will, on the optimistic side, I would love to believe that there are places to go, um, and I hope to see them in this new show if possible.
And yeah, so we kind of have been discussing possible plots for this show. Another topic to talk about is kind of just the advent of all these streaming services. HBO Max just released last year, and most of these big streaming services, they can do whatever they can to get their hands on a big IP and at times it seems almost exploit it for as much money as possible. So what are y'all's thoughts on the kind of the idea of a big budget TV show on a brand new streaming service? Obviously, I think there's a lot of good coming from it, but do y'all have any concerns in terms of just kind of like touching, just the really beloved just universe that many people grew up reading, and just the idea of it kind of being exploited for money, I think kind of can always raise an issue.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot to unpack with like the idea of continuing something. I think you got to do it the right way if you want, like Agents of Shield, for example, continuing the Marvel universe in a Shield in a series like that. I think that actually worked because people liked it. It was very similar to what we saw in the Harry Potter world. Now, obviously, like HBO Max is going to be, you said, putting a lot of money into this. So they're going to have to, it's up to them to maintain what we saw in the Harry Potter movies, maintain the same world that we see in Universal Studios, like even in person. Um, I think there's a lot of stuff that they have to be consistent with when they're doing this. That being said, like another possible plot that I thought of was actually, I saw like there was something speculation about it being possibly like a prequel and like being about the founders of Hogwarts, maybe their story, like how Salazar, Slytherin, and all the four leaders of the houses actually had some conflict and maybe some backstory with that. I think there's a lot of avenues for this plot to go, and I think since it's going to require a lot of money, it's very important that they maintain consistency with like the wizarding world.
It's also very possible. Um, I just had this thought. It's very possible that they do the eighth installment and it not be necessarily a movie, but a sort of breaking up of the acts of the play into episodes of a TV show. And um, have you read that, by the way, or have you read the eighth
I
one?
have not. It's Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, right?
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
I have not read it either, but I definitely got a synopsis and a sort of like summary of the video. So I guess I like spoiled it for myself. But in that story, they go back in time. Harry's children go back in time, and we get to see some of the old characters, and we get to revisit some of the stories. Some of the stories, like in the fourth one, when Cedric dies, and we get to see Cedric and what would happen if he was alive, if he survived the ordeal, um, and sort of the outcome of different alternate realities. And I think that would be really cool to explore in a TV show with all the time and excitement that could go into it.
Yeah, you mentioned the possibility of seeing older characters. And I think that's another interesting point because the movies are still relatively quite new. I know that other big franchises like Star Wars, they have this issue if they want to bring back, characters, either they're dead or they have this problem of de-aging them. And the technology is still not quite there. But I think it's interesting with Harry Potter because I think a lot of the characters are still, they're not they're still able to be recognized, I think, without putting a lot of de-aging on them. So yeah, I think if there is a time to explore all that, it would be now. For more videos from M2M, check out our other playlists.